Well, good morning. It's good to be up here. A few weeks ago, I think it was my second week here. I was helping Miss Paula in the preschool class, and you know how preschoolers are. They're squirrely, move around a lot, hard to get them to focus on one thing. But something caught my attention. As soon as Miss Paula transitioned to story time, the kids were automatically locked in. All of a sudden, all their focus was on Miss Paula, and they were captivated by the stories. And it really caught me off guard. But then it had me thinking, like we're designed and wired for stories. And even as you grow up and get older, I'm wearing a shirt that has a bunch of superheroes on it. Like, I love superhero movies. I love stories. And I'm captivated by those stories. And so, stories just have a way of making their way into our minds and making a difference in our lives. And so if I were to open up this stool for anybody in the audience, invite somebody up to have them share their story, they would be able to share their experiences, their joys, their pains, anything that they've been through, and we would be touched by that, most likely. And that's what I get to do this morning, so I'm very grateful. I'm honestly honored to share it in front of you guys, and I hope that, and I pray that it just encourages you. So, growing up, I really thought my testimony was boring. I grew up in the church and super stable family, not a whole lot of drama going on when I grew up, and just never thought my testimony was really worth putting out there because it wasn't very dramatic. But eventually I came to this point where I realized that my story matters because Jesus is in it. And even if it wasn't as dramatic as other people's, maybe, not that it's a competition, but because of that, because I have Jesus, it still matters and it's worth sharing. And even in Mark chapter 5, it's where Jesus is in this place and there's this demon-possessed man and not even chains can hold him down. And Jesus comes and heals him, does his Jesus thing, and eventually the people are like, this guy's terrifying. They send Jesus out, and as he's in the boat, the guy that he heals comes up to him and he says, please let me go with you. I want to go with you. I want to follow you. And Jesus' response is really interesting. This is Mark 5, verse 19 and 20. And he says, Jesus did not let him go, but told him, go home to your own people and report to them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And so he went out and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and they were all amazed. And so simply, that's all I want to do this morning, is just tell you what Jesus has done in my life. So I was born in Carthage, Illinois. Grew up in the first 18 months of my life in a small town called Burnside. My dad was the lead pastor at a small church there. I have to make sure I tell this part of the story right. We had a really small house. It was a parsonage, and I slept in the bathroom, but I did not sleep in the bathtub. For a long time, I thought my bed was the bathtub. It was not. I had some other thing I slept in, but just my family, so you have to get that part of the story straight. But when I was 18 months old, my family got up and moved to a town called Eldon, Missouri, where my dad became the lead pastor at a church there, kind of filled in the shoes of a church where the pastor had just passed away, and he kind of had to earn their respect, their trust, their love. But yeah, just grew up in the church, was there every Sunday morning, Wednesday night, just grew up knowing everything about it. And when I was 7 years old, I made the decision. I'd seen so many people do it, so I was like, you know what, I want to get baptized. So I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, I'm ready. And so he respected that decision. We went through a couple weeks of study, and then I got baptized, and all I remember is I recited a couple verses of scripture, which I couldn't even recall now, but I recited them in front of the church and got baptized, and it was the perfect image of a preacher's kid. It was exactly what you would expect from a preacher's kid, just a perfect facade, and facade is an intentional word there. Faith was always familiar, but it took a long time for it to be a personal faith. And so, I was homeschooled till 5th grade, went to public school. 5th grade, that was tough, trying to make friends, that whole thing. Luckily, Just Dance did the breakthrough for me. We had a brain break, and I was shy and timid for like 3 weeks, and then we had a brain break, played Just Dance, and my homeschool self couldn't help himself, and apparently everybody else thought it was cool. So I got friends through Just Dance and started to hang out with them during recess, played sports, football, basketball, kickball, whatever it was, and started to get, I guess, popular. That doesn't matter, but I was popular, quote unquote. 6th grade was kind of a tough year. Halfway through the year, my homeroom teacher passed away in kind of a tragic accident. Just one day, I was in classroom talking to him about, I think it was Carmelo Anthony and something about him playing for the Nuggets and other nerdy stuff. And then the next day we were in school mourning his loss. And so that was a tough thing. And you're in 6th grade and you don't really know how to cope with those emotions. And I remember at his funeral, I was crying during the whole thing, but as soon as it was over, as soon as I started to gather around my friends, I made sure I wouldn't let the emotions, I wouldn't let people see those. And so that moment really began a time of bottling up everything, reserving, pushing everything down, not letting people in. And so that would start a really unhealthy rhythm in my life. When I got into middle school in 7th grade, I found sports. I did cross country, basketball, and track, and really enjoyed running. I'd watched my dad run growing up and figured I wanted to do that and started doing it, really enjoyed it, had some success in it, and fast forward to 8th grade year, more success. COVID hits in the spring of my 8th grade year. COVID was a good time for me, a bunch of training and a bunch of just having fun. Didn't necessarily follow all the guidelines, but I guess I can say that 5 years removed now. But so I get into high school, and all of a sudden there's this kind of pressure because you're getting raised up in middle school. High school coaches, they look down and they're seeing what's going on, and obviously I was successful. So there's kind of begins to develop this pressure of expectation of performance. And so, which, I'll be honest, I delivered for the most part, and especially cross country and track. I was super successful my freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. I did records and medals and all the things that you would want as a runner. But especially my freshman through junior year, it became an obsession with people's attention. I was not running for the joy of it. I was not running because it was something I found fun. I was not running because I was not running for me. And I definitely wasn't running because Jesus had given me the gift. I was running because it brought success, it brought attention. But at the same time, our top girl on the team was more successful, had more attention, and that drove me. I was driven by hate, by jealousy, by envy, and it tore me apart. And those things very easily can poison you. And really, I was talking with Tyler and Lauren a couple weeks ago. They were like, yeah, you were a jerk. I was like, looking back, I definitely was. And not a proud time of my life, but those were the things that I thought I had to do and had to be driven by to be successful at the level that I wanted to be successful at. And so I continued to be bitter and continued to just hate and be driven by that. Finally, the summer before my senior year of high school, Tyler took our church youth group to a camp in Colorado called NYR, Nationwide Youth Roundup. And it was there. I'd been recruited by a few D2 schools at the time to go and run for them, and I was kind of thinking through that whole process. During NYR, God he finally just hit me over the head with a frying pan and said, wake up! I realized that I didn't really want to compete anymore with a high level of pressure, with a high level of expectation. I realized that I had misplaced my identity in the things that I was competing in. Instead of being a child of God, I was a child of success, or a child of whatever results I can get on the course or on the court or on the track, whatever it may be. And so that week, once again, got hit with the frying pan, and after a few conversations, I decided that I didn't want to run Division II. I was just going to go run for a Bible college. I was going to go to Ozark Christian College, and I was going to pursue sports broadcasting at Missouri Southern State University with a dual co-op program that they have there. And I thought, okay, we're all set. That's going to be great. And honestly, that week of NYR really did change my mindset. Instead of being bitter and envious and jealous and just hateful, straight up hateful, during cross country and track, I was finally able to run with joy, run with freedom, and compete with just a sense of enjoyment and do it for the love of the sport, do it for the love of what I get to do. And I finally invited Jesus into that, and I got to, I don't think it's any coincidence that was one of the best years of my life, was just that senior year, which it's a very memorable time anyways, but it didn't hurt that I finally invited Jesus into it for sure. But yeah, so I had more success, but finally enjoyed it with family and with friends and with the people that were around me. I remember state meet my senior year. I finally medaled in track, which was the first time I'd done it, and I'd done it in the 1600, 3200, doesn't matter. But finally got state medals in track, which was a big goal of mine. And it finally wasn't about the medals. It was just about, hey, I did this cool thing. Now I get to go just have the joy of celebrating with my coaches, with my teammates, with my friends, with my family. And so that was a really special moment. But right after that, I kind of felt this, I guess it'd be a lull. I knew I was running in the fall for Ozark, and I knew it was Bible college, so I was like, surely I don't have to come in that good a shape because, it's a lower level, but there was a training plan. I followed it maybe like 25% of the days. Didn't really commit myself to running, and I just was burnt out on it, but I refused to recognize that and refused to let it happen. And it was just it continued from sixth grade. It was like, I feel this way, like I feel like I just want to stop, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to shove it down and get over it, get over yourself, be tough, that kind of thing. And so, as I got to college, which is a huge transition, even for a Bible college student, it was a little different. And I knew one person on campus going in, just kind of a different situation for sure. You go from knowing almost everybody in your school to knowing one person at your school, even though it was a smaller campus and all the things. And so I move into Ozark. I start running with the cross-country team, and I'll tell you, I hated it. I hated every second of it. Never in my life before had I dreaded going to practice or going for a run. Never in my life had I been so nervous about meeting expectations that I couldn't eat and couldn't train myself properly. And finally, it all exploded on what was supposed to be my first race of the season. It was at MSSU, so we were right there in Joplin, and after lunch, I'd eaten lunch and went to go take a nap just to get ready for the meet. It was pretty hot that day, so I was just trying to take care of myself. And when I wake up from the nap, I couldn't move. I felt like I was paralyzed. I felt like I couldn't do anything. It took all the strength in me to turn over, grab my phone, and call my parents because they were on their way to watch me race. I called them. I said, Mom, my mom answered the phone. I said, Mom, I can't move. And she goes, why not? It's like, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I'm scared. I don't want to run. I really, 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 really don't want to run. And she said, then don't. So I didn't run that night, and fast forward a week, and I'm having a conversation with the cross-country coach there, and I said, listen, I feel like if I continue trying to run, it's just going to not go well, and I'm not going to be able to race at all, so I think I'm going to quit. And what I thought would be, I remember feeling super relieved in the moment that I was done, and I thought that would kind of be the end of that, but it was really more the beginning of a new season of identity. And I talked a little bit about how at NYR my identity started to shift a little bit, but it wasn't all the way there yet, and it took a lot of time. So I quit cross country, and all of a sudden, the one thing that I'd known for 5-6 straight years was just training and running and going and going and going and going, all of a sudden stopped. And I thought I would enjoy it. I thought I'd enjoy the freedom. But I didn't realize how deeply invested my identity was in what I was doing, not who I was in God's eyes. And so I began a season of severe anxiety and experienced panic attack. I probably had 5 over the course of the first semester, which I never had anxiety or panic attacks or anything like that before. I didn't know what was going on. I was scared to death. I thought I was dying half the time, a little bit dramatic, but I thought I was dying. And finally, I committed myself to trying to get help. And I started going to therapy and counseling and just started talking to people, and that's when I really discovered that something down inside of me had just ruptured open. And think of it like your appendix. Instead of your appendix exploding, it was just all my emotions just erupting all at once, turning into all sorts of different worries and anxieties. And all of a sudden, I didn't know who I was. Life didn't feel real half the time. I remember so many nights just crying, being like, I just want to know if life is real. And eventually it got to the point where I was like, you know what, God? Either take this anxiety or take my life, because I can't live with this any longer. I don't know what's going on. And he said, not yet. And so I kept going. And he guided me and he comforted me, but he said, not yet. I still dealt with the anxiety, and I continually had to meet with counselors and therapists, and day after day was tough. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to get through this class period. Okay, how am I going to get through lunch? How am I going to get through this homework without having a panic attack? It rules your mind when you have that level of anxiety, and you just have panic attack on your mind all the time. You're always in this flight or flight mode. And I just kept going, just night after night. So many times I was like, God, take this or take me. And eventually I figured out I was at rock bottom. But luckily, also in that time, I found out God was the rock at the bottom. And just looking back at it with perspective now, hindsight's 20/20, but just looking back at it now, I realized that God had to strip everything away, including running, including all the things I'd enjoyed for so many years, had to strip it away so that he could open my eyes to what I was actually made to be and who I was made to be. And that took a long time. Like I said, the whole first semester, almost didn't come back for the second semester because I hated the first semester so much. I remember calling my parents. I was like, I don't want to come back. I just want to stay home and I'll get a job and just work there and it'll be fine. But thankfully they encouraged me and just stuck with the process, and things started to get a little bit better week after week. Not a ton, but a little bit at a time. And then finally it took me like 3 months to get into a doctor, and I was prescribed Prozac, which is an anxiety medication, 10 milligrams of it, which you think is nothing, right? And all of a sudden I start taking that, and things start to get a little bit better. And I'm like, all right, that's cool, but now I start to feel guilty because it's like, well, maybe I should just trust in God more. Maybe I should have more faith in God, and I wouldn't have to take this medication. And I remember a conversation with my counselor at the time. Her name's Laura Porter. And she said, I'm not sure why we always separate God from scientific research and medication. You see, when you take this Prozac that's going to help you, that is a resource that God has given us to help you. And so it took a little bit of wrestling with that, and there's a stigma around it, but eventually I was like, okay, fine. I gave in, I start taking it. And the calendar flips to 2025, and all of a sudden it's like I'm a whole new person. I feel like myself again, I guess, but I was a much, much healthier version of myself. I was finally back to being joyful. Life felt real again, which was great. And this past semester, is just in the spring. It's crazy that this is all just less than a year removed from this, but the spring I started attending College Heights Christian Church, and I started going to the college age, and I found a really strong and tight community that really helped me grow. And instead of bottling up everything that I felt, because, it wasn't a perfect semester, things happen, there's tough things you go through, but you start to rely on community, and finally it's like you're not bearing all of the burdens on your own. When you can share with other people around you that care about you, they can help carry it too. It makes it a little bit lighter. You can breathe a little bit easier. I could stand up a little bit straighter. And those 4 guys back there, they didn't know they were going to get a shout out, but those are all guys from my college age community that have just been so good and great friends. Even if it's not, not everything's a Jesus conversation. We talk about dumb stuff that doesn't even matter most of the time, actually. But just having that kind of community is so vital to faith. And my faith was really just blossoming. I'd seen the struggle I'd gone through, and I was out of it. And I could look back and say, God, you were there every moment through that. When I wanted to die, when I thought I was going to die, you said, hold on, buddy. Let's calm down. Just take it one day at a time, one moment at a time, and I'll see you through it. And he did. He's faithful. So I continued through that semester, and just opportunity after opportunity, whether it be with the church. We got to go to New Orleans for a mission trip, which was a ton of fun. Just different broadcasting opportunities, just having fun with that, and just the most fruitful season of my life. I was, I talked about, I grew up in the church, grew up in the faith, knowing everything about Jesus, but it took until my first year of college to finally lay everything down and say, Jesus, I want to actually know you. I don't want to know about you. I want to take that next step and actually know you and let you in and transform me, because I can't do this on my own anymore. And so here I am standing in Bentonville, Arkansas. Never thought I'd do that first semester. Thought I was just going to be at home for the rest of my life. Here I am sharing my testimony, which I never thought was important a long time ago, for a long time, I should say. And I just want to encourage you guys that God is faithful, that He, even in my life, which, like I said, isn't super dramatic, but just through difficulties, He guides you through it. And there's that metaphor of the walk on the beach. You can see the footsteps where God's holding your hand, you're walking together, but then you can see the times where there's only 2 footsteps. And that's God carrying you, and that's what it felt like that whole semester. But I'm on the other side of that, and I can tell you I've been changed for the better because of it, and I consider it pure joy that I faced that trial. And I'm just super thankful to be here this summer. And so that is my life story, and there's a lot more details that do not matter. But, honestly, just to kind of conclude this, I started out by talking about how we're wired for stories, how they shape us, hold our attention, that kind of thing. And for a long time, I think especially with the athletic part, I was trying to write my story with me as the hero, with me as the one making the decisions. And I wore this shirt as an illustration. It was trying to be me saving the world in the sense. And even though I knew growing up all about Jesus, I didn't truly have a relationship with Him. I thought I could handle life on my own. Thought I could figure things out by myself. I was wrong. About 3 weeks into college, I figured out, I was wrong. And trying to do everything on my own only left me in that hatred, in that jealousy, in that envy, in that bitterness. And so when Jesus steps in, when He stepped into my life and I finally said, all right, I've got nothing else left. I'm on the floor crying in a college dorm room. I need something. And He stepped in, and my story completely changed. And so He rescued me from anxiety, and obviously through the medication really helped that. He helped me through tons of different struggles, whether it was just relationally and getting over just thought patterns I was in during high school, just temptations of jealousy, of selfishness, of lust, that kind of thing, just kind of getting past that and realizing that I was made for so much more in life than to live in those patterns and to live in those spaces of sin. And so He gave me a new identity, and one that isn't about what I can do. It's not about how fast I run at said and said course. It's not about what place I get on the stand. It's about who He says that I am. And He says, you are a child of God. I love you, and I will take care of you. You just got to be faithful. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be faithful every step of the way, because I know He's got my back. And so Jesus, as He says on this shirt, I don't know if you can read it, but Jesus talking to all these different sorts of superheroes, He said, and that's how I save the world. And honestly, that's how He saved my world, all right? So Jesus is faithful. He's the author of my life now, and just super thankful to be here once again. It's been just so humbling, and so I've been so grateful for how well you guys have welcomed me this summer. It's been a really fun summer so far, and it's not over. Still got a few weeks, but I feel like we're just getting into it, but summer's not long enough, I guess. But just wanted to thank you guys for how welcoming you've been, and just taking that steps and including me. I've really, really appreciated it, and it's just been a blessing for sure. So communion's going to be, Michael is going to lead communion right after this, but I'm going to close in prayer, and then we'll move on from here. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for for the opportunity to share how you've worked in my life. I pray that you would have spoke through me, whatever silly jokes or whatever I would have tried to say, that you would have found a way around those, and that Lord, that I would just encourage people this morning. Lord, and I just pray that you would remind people every day how much they're loved, how much they're cared for, and how much you see them. Lord, and when we face these trials and struggles, help us consider it pure joy. Because you change us through struggle and through just adversity. And so we thank you for those things, and give us a perspective like Jesus, like we sang. Make us more like Jesus with everything that we do. Help us include you into our lives and change us from the inside out. God, I love you, and we thank you, and I thank you so much for this church. And I just pray that you would just bless the things that we're doing here. Keep us humble, keep us faithful, and just be with us as we go. It's your son's name I pray. Amen.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Thank you, Nate.
Yep.
Thanks for being vulnerable with us this morning. I saw his dad, Chris, who was my boss for 8 years. Saw him over before church as I was taking Griff out. And just told him, it's been really good to have Nate here this summer. And it's been cool because I was his youth minister for 6 years and his coach for probably 5 of those years. And so one of the students that I've been closest to in my ministries. And so it's awesome to have him here. But so much of what Nate just explained happened after he left our ministry, after he went to college. And so these are things that Lauren and I didn't really get to experience with him. But it's been really cool to see Nate, who was just the student that you want to have in your student ministry. As a youth minister, you want a Nate in your youth group. And so it was great having Nate all those years, but it's been really cool seeing Nate leave student ministry, leave his home church, and go to a new place, and really let that faith become his own. And I would say that his faith was his own, maybe more than he would admit, but I think you've been able to see a lot has happened in his life over the past year, and it's really cool to see him kind of own those things and take that kind of burden and learn from that and grow from that. And so thank you for sharing that this morning. I just want to ask you 2 questions,
Yep.
kind of following up from that. And you kind of talked about it a little bit, but if you would, what is just the thing that you've learned the most over the past year going through a lot of this stuff? If you could wrap that up in a sentence or 2, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I kind of hit on it a little bit, but I think more than anything, it's just the fact or the blessing that community is and how much we need it. You can think you can do everything on your own as much as you want, but at the end of the day, you need people around you that you can rely on, that you can that care for you and that you can care for, and you're grown more that way than you'll ever be on your own. And so I would just say community is vital. And sometimes you have to seek it out. Sometimes you have to go to places you're uncomfortable to find it. But just establishing a community that cares for you is extremely important.
Cool. Another shout out to the guys.
Yep.
And then last question I'll ask is, how would you encourage, or what would you say to someone who is maybe quietly going through some of the things that you've experienced, especially if they're a student, especially if they're an athlete, or maybe their thing is band, or maybe just academics. How would you encourage them? What would you say to somebody who might be experiencing some of the things that you've experienced?
Yeah. I think the 2 words that come to mind are freedom and joy, and you want to experience that when you're doing what you love. Whatever you're putting your energy towards, you want to live those out and approach those with freedom and with joy. And it took me a long time to do that, but I talked about my senior year finally running with that freedom and joy and competing with freedom and joy. And so I would say a lot of the pressure you may feel, I can tell you probably 75% plus of it is yourself, maybe 100%, who knows. And so if you can, you should invite Jesus into it, is what I should say. Invite Jesus into it. Let him shape your identity. And I know it might be tough. I just shared how hard it was to have an identity change, but be willing to go through that, to experience freedom and joy in the things that you do. It's so worthwhile. Just the things that I get to do this summer are just so joyful and so fun, because I have finally come to this point where I'm like, okay, it's not about me. It's not about what I can do. It's just about being faithful and enjoying the moment. And so, I would just say whether you're competing, running, sports, basketball, football, athletics, band, whatever it may be, whether it's even work, just approach that with freedom and with joy, and let that be the driving factor, not anybody's opinion, not any results or anything like that. Just go in almost agendaless and just try to enjoy the things that you get to do. So I think that's what I'd say.
Cool. Well, thank you, Nathan. I'm going to pray for you real fast. Lots of wisdom shared here today from an almost 20-year-old. His birthday's on Tuesday, which is exciting. But I just want to pray for you, brother. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Nathan, and thank you for his willingness to be here and serve this summer. And I'm thankful for his humble spirit and his willingness to just step in and do whatever is asked of him. Thank you for his willingness to share today and be vulnerable and just shed light on some of the struggles that he's experienced and the ways that God has worked in his life over this past year. May we be encouraged by that and through that. We love you. We thank you for Jesus, and it's in his name we pray. Amen.